This is a poem called Shangri-La. I'm not sure the author. It starts with a small quote. Shangri-La, a mystery story. Forgotten Victorian objects like the gasogene and the Tantalus. Kate Murph from The Game Still Afoot. 1. People were missing. Holmes was consulted. People were being erased like chalk from slate in backs of hansom cabs. Outside, the fresh run of a cloudburst twirled assorted rinds and papers through the gutters. Holmes had slept through the rain, but could gauge its intensity easily by the litter's rate. And an Erkin, whistling to keep up his spirits, slipped past through the shop front windows, new to the neighborhood, Holmes observed, and filed away his likeness. Inside, business as usual. Business, in fact, for him it was always fact, was booming. Eventually, everyone disappears. And it was simple enough. The mariner hunkered fetus-like for 3 days in a fiendishly clever contraption, Watson, a keg of pickled cucumbers, so fitted as to enable his being dryly, although uncomfortably housed, with breathing apparatus concealed in a false stave, which I noticed when... But what of the others? Unnoticeable and without clues. Every night, Mr. Holmes, my wife, she goes to sleep and disappears somewhere beyond our life for a good 8 hours. I need to know where. And he, who awoke alone to see the rain-slicked bricks of Baker Street and always had and always would, was curiously unfit for such investigation. People were unbeing themselves in every domicile in London, Watson, and I am powerless to halt it. There were no malefactors. These were only citizens like you and me. Enter a parlor, for instance. Here's this rage of all the city, the stereopticon. What it does exactly is take 2 printed images, 2 people, and make them one. And over time, we can perfect it. We being human and time being time, can ultra-rarify the principle and make one person no one. At my father's grave, I've often hoped for an answer to this, but there's none to detect. 2. A woman I know isn't here anymore, though she walks and talks with the living. I've seen somebody rev her Toyota, chug her Bud. Whoever it isn't her. She's retreated. She's fled back to that zombie point inside a person where all of the lines of the face converge. An inch? Maybe an inch. 100 miles? The psyche can do that to space. Now all of her friends are mourning. Either an inch or 100 miles of mourning, depending on how they perceive it. And being inside her isn't sex so much as entering the streets of her skin at night with the only lantern I have, and calling her name at each crossroads. That afternoon, I worked on my Holmes poem. Words, even the words, were disappearing. All those dear, quaint, Victorian commonplaces sloughing off the surface of the mother tongue. Landau clattered by for the last time. Brougham followed close behind. These carriages vanished on a far rise, leaving only their horses. Bewildered a moment, lightened of the load, then grazing. They'd never return to an ostler, never again, and he would never cumbersomely buckle into his ulster. Would people seek lodgings sometime, announcing themselves by calling cards? And what of jollification? What of apoplexy? Both these bisque-red flushings of the cheeks were disappearing from the tradesmen. I was thinking of a woman I love who wasn't the woman I love. It was a very old story, older than we are. Maybe she has brain fever. Maybe I do. Watson has no nostrum in all of his pharmacopoeia.